Welcome, my friends, and let me spin a tale of a surgeon's secret. A life-altering revelation that will take us on a journey through the depths of love, betrayal, and the unbreakable bonds of family. Enjoy the story. Dr. William Johnson stood in his pristine office, admiring the sleek minimalist decor. The scent of fresh paint still lingered in the air, a reminder that this was a new beginning. He had finally accepted the position at the prestigious clinic after years of their persistent recruitment efforts. The promise of a higher salary, challenging work, and opportunities for growth had been too tempting to resist. Yet, deep down, William knew there was another reason he had come to this city, a distant memory from his childhood when his father had brought him here. For years, William believed he had been born and raised in this very city, and that his mother had abandoned them shortly after his birth. As he settled into his leather chair, a knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he called out, straightening his tie. Dr. Inga, a fellow surgeon, entered the office with a warm smile. "Dr. Johnson, welcome to the team. We're thrilled to have you on board." William stood up and shook her hand, returning the smile. "Thank you, Dr. Inga. I'm excited to be here and contribute to the incredible work you're doing." "Please call me Inga. We're colleagues now," she said, her eyes sparkling with genuine warmth. "I've heard great things about your surgical skills. I'm sure you'll fit right in." William nodded, feeling a sense of pride and belonging. "I'm ready to get started, and please call me William." Young William fidgeted in his seat, pushing his peas around the plate with his fork. It was Sunday dinner, and he had been gathering the courage to ask his father about his mother for nearly a week. At school, he noticed that all the other children were accompanied by their mothers, and it made him wonder why they never visited his mother's grave. "Dad," William finally spoke up, his voice trembling slightly. "What happened to Mom?" John, William's father, choked on his roast beef and slowly set down his utensils. He took a sip of water, buying himself a moment to compose his thoughts. "Son, your mother, she passed away when you were very young," he said, avoiding William's gaze. William frowned, unconvinced. "But why don't we ever visit her grave or talk about her?" John sighed heavily, realizing he could no longer maintain the facade. He pushed his plate aside and leaned forward, looking directly at William. "I'm sorry, William. I haven't been entirely truthful with you. Your mother didn't die. She left us to live far away." William's eyes widened in shock, a mix of confusion and anger welling up inside him. "What? Why would she leave us? Didn't she love me?" John reached out and placed a hand on William's shoulder, his voice softer now. "It's complicated, son. I promised to tell you everything when you turn 13. For now, just know that it wasn't your fault, and I love you very much." William nodded, trying to process this new information. He knew he would have to wait for the full story, but the revelation that his mother had abandoned them left a bitter taste in his mouth. On his 13th birthday, William eagerly unwrapped his gift, a state-of-the-art audio system. As he admired the sleek components, he suddenly remembered his father's promise. "Dad, you said you'd tell me about Mom when I turned 13. Well, here I am." John's face grew somber as he sat down beside his son. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the conversation he had been dreading for years. "Your mother, she left us for another man. She met him while she was pregnant with you, and as soon as she recovered from giving birth, she ran away with him. I don't know where she is or how she's living, and frankly, I don't care to know." William felt a wave of anger and betrayal wash over him. His hands clenched into fists, and he stood up abruptly, pacing the room. "How could she do that to us? To me? I was just a baby." John watched his son, his heart heavy with the weight of the truth. "I'm sorry, William. I wish I had better news for you. But I want you to know that I will always be here for you, no matter what." William stopped pacing and turned to face his father, his eyes burning with determination. "If she ever comes crawling back to us on her knees, I'll turn my back on her, just like she did to us. I don't need her. I have you, and that's enough." John stood up and embraced his son, both of them holding on to each other as if their lives depended on it. In that moment, They knew that their bond was unbreakable, forged by the pain of abandonment and the strength of their love for each other. Years later, Dr. William Johnson had become a renowned surgeon in his early 30s, known for his ability to perform complex surgeries with unparalleled skill. He attributed much of his success to his father's strict upbringing. John had been a looming shadow throughout William's life, pushing him to attend extra classes, accept internships abroad, and strive for the highest level of professionalism. "Dr. Johnson, you're needed in OR 3 for an emergency surgery," a nurse said, poking her head into his office. William nodded, grabbing his surgical cap and heading towards the operating room. As he scrubbed in, he thought back to the countless hours he had spent studying and practicing, all under his father's watchful eye. "You have a gift, William," John had told him after he had successfully completed his first solo surgery. "Don't ever waste it. Your patients are counting on you." Those words had stayed with William, driving him to excel in his field. He believed that his profession was his entire world, and that he could help patients in ways no one else could. When John fell ill with pneumonia, William insisted that he be admitted to the hospital, but his father kept postponing the visit. On the third evening, William found John collapsed on the floor and rushed him to the best hospital in the city. As John regained consciousness, he beckoned William closer, his voice weak and strained. "Son, there's something I need to tell you about your mother. I deprived her of her parental rights and took you away from her because she married me out of fear, not love. When she tried to leave with you, I used my money and connections to destroy her, as she was an orphan with no one to turn to. To prevent you from ever hearing this story, I moved us to another city." William stumbled back, shocked by the revelation. He shook his head in disbelief, tears welling up in his eyes. "How could you do that, Dad? How could you lie to me all these years?" John reached out, his hand trembling. "I'm sorry, William. I thought I was protecting you. I didn't want you to grow up knowing that your mother didn't want us. But I was wrong. I should have told you the truth from the beginning." William turned away, his heart torn between anger and grief. He left the hospital, his mind reeling from the truth. He walked the streets for hours, trying to process the revelation that had shattered his world. When he returned to the hospital, he found that his father had passed away. William collapsed into a chair beside the bed, sobbing uncontrollably. He had lost his father and gained a truth that would haunt him forever. Consumed by the need to uncover the truth about his mother, William spent the next 3 years in his parents' hometown, searching for any clues that might lead him to her. He knocked on doors, visited old family friends, and scoured public records, desperate for any information. "I'm sorry, Dr. Johnson," an elderly neighbor said, shaking her head. "Your mother left town over a decade ago, and no one has heard from her since. It's as if she vanished into thin air." Disappointed, but not defeated, William returned to the city and accepted a position as the head of a private clinic. He threw himself into his work, determined to make a difference in his patients' lives. One fateful day, a badly injured man was admitted to the clinic, and William found himself in a race against time to save his life. He worked tirelessly, his hands moving with precision and skill as he fought to repair the damage. As he stepped out of the operating room, a fellow old surgeon remarked, "Why even try? He's got 10 minutes to live." William turned to him, his eyes blazing with determination. "Every life is worth fighting for. We don't give up on our patients, no matter how dire the situation may seem." The old surgeon shrugged and walked away, but William knew that he had done everything in his power to give the man a chance at survival. As William left the clinic that evening, he noticed a commotion near the entrance. A security guard was harassing a poor elderly woman, shoving her away from the building. "Please, I just need to see a doctor," the woman pleaded, her voice trembling with fear. The guard sneered at her, his voice dripping with contempt. "We don't treat your kind here. Now get lost before I call the police." Without hesitation, William intervened, stepping between the guard and the woman. "That's enough," he said, his voice firm and authoritative. "This woman is a patient, and she deserves to be treated with respect." The guard looked at William, surprised by his interference. "But Dr. Johnson, She can't afford treatment here. She's just a beggar off the streets. William helped the woman to her feet, his eyes never leaving the guard's face. It doesn't matter who she is or what she can afford. We have a duty to help those in need. Now, go back to your post and let me handle this. The guard slunk away, mumbling under his breath. William turned to the woman, his voice softening. Are you all right? Is there anything I can do to help? The woman looked up at him, her eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you, doctor. I don't know what I would have done without your kindness. Dr. Inga approached William, having witnessed the exchange. That was impressive, William. Not many doctors would have stood up for her like that. William smiled at Inga, his heart warming at her praise. It was the right thing to do. No one should be denied medical care because of their circumstances. Inga nodded, her admiration for William growing by the second. You know, I've heard that she lives in a rundown house in a nearby private sector. Maybe we could visit her, see if there's anything else we can do to help. William considered the idea. His curiosity piqued. That's a great idea, Inga. Let's go together. I have a feeling there's more to her story than meets the eye. William and Inga arrived at the dilapidated house, and the elderly woman greeted them with a mixture of surprise and gratitude. She invited them inside, her hand shaking as she offered them a seat on the worn couch. As they settled in, William's gaze fell upon a faded photograph on the mantel. It depicted his father, a young woman, and a baby, himself. His heart skipped a beat, and he stood up, walking closer to the picture. The woman followed his gaze, her voice trembling as she spoke. I see you've noticed the photograph. That's me, with your father and you, when you were just a baby. William turned to her, his eyes wide with shock. You're my mother? The woman nodded, tears streaming down her face. Yes, William. I'm your mother, Grace. I've been searching for you for years, hoping to make amends for the past. Inga gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. She looked between William and Grace, stunned by the revelation. William stood in silence, trying to process the information. He had spent years searching for his mother, and now here she was, standing before him in the flesh. Grace took a tentative step forward, her voice barely above a whisper. If my presence bothers you, I'll disappear. I don't want to cause you any more pain. I know I've made mistakes, and I don't deserve your forgiveness. But William, armed with the truth he had learned from his father, simply embraced her, his own tears mingling with hers. No, Mom, you're coming home with me. We have a lot of catching up to do. He turned to Inga, his eyes shining with emotion. Inga, would you like to join us for dinner? There's a story you need to hear. Inga nodded, her own eyes glistening with tears. Of course, William. I wouldn't miss it for the world. Grace stepped into William's apartment, her eyes wide with wonder. She ran her fingers along the smooth surface of the kitchen counter, marveling at the modern appliances and sleek furniture. It's lovely, William. You've done so well for yourself, she said, her voice filled with pride. William smiled, guiding her to the living room. Thanks, Mom. It's taken a lot of hard work, but I'm proud of what I've accomplished. As they settled onto the couch, Grace's expression grew somber. I can't help but feel a lingering fear of your father. He was a good man in some ways, but he became a beast when it came to me. I know he loved you, but the way he treated me, it was unforgivable. William took her hand, squeezing it reassuringly. I know, Mom. What he did to you was wrong, and I'm sorry you had to go through that. But we'll make things right. It would have been much worse if Dad had never told me the truth. Now, we can start anew, together. Grace smiled, her heart swelling with love for her son. They talked for hours, catching up on lost time, sharing stories and laughter. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, Grace stood up, stretching her arms above her head. You should rest before Inga arrives, William. I'll prepare dinner. It's the least I can do after all these years. William nodded, suddenly feeling the weight of the day's emotions. He settled onto the couch, his mother's hand still clasped in his, and drifted off to sleep, a peaceful slumber he had dreamed of for years. When Inga arrived, the apartment was filled with the aroma of home-cooked food and the sound of laughter. She joined William and Grace at the dinner table, and together they shared a meal and a story that would change their lives forever. As the evening drew to a close, William walked Inga to the door, his heart full of gratitude and love. "Thank you for being here, Inga. Your support means the world to me." Inga smiled, her hand resting on his cheek. "I'll always be here for you, William. You're an amazing man, and I'm lucky to have you in my life." With a gentle kiss, they parted ways, both knowing that this was just the beginning of a beautiful new chapter in their lives. In the weeks and months that followed, William, Grace, and Inga grew closer, their bond strengthened by the love and understanding they shared. Grace moved in with William, and together they worked to rebuild their relationship, one day at a time. William continued to excel in his career, his reputation as a skilled and compassionate surgeon growing with each passing year. Inga remained by his side, both as a colleague and a partner, their love for each other deepening with every shared moment. As for Grace, she found peace and happiness in her new life, surrounded by the love of her son and the acceptance of his chosen family. She volunteered at local charities, using her own experiences to help others in need, and found a sense of purpose that had been missing for so long. The scars of the past would never fully fade, but together they had found the strength to heal and move forward. The surgeon's secret had been revealed, and in its place a new legacy had been born, one of love, forgiveness, and the unbreakable bonds of family.